Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Cale Casey here on day 3 of our Break It Down live series from the command post for the August complex. I'm with Brooke Tabor from the National Weather Service. Before we dive into the weather with Brooke, we want to remind everybody, hunters and firefighters don't mix. There are large closures around our area. Please stay away from our fire personnel who are working all around to protect Ruth and Post Mountain and getting all the assessments done. Also, we have our fire information line and our federal INSEE website in this post. Please call. From the National Weather Service, our incident meteorologist, Brooke, is here to give us an idea of the fire weather and how we can plan for the future.
Thank you, Cal. Once again, Brooke Tabor with the National Weather Service. The last couple of days, we've seen high pressure over the area. That has resulted in some light north to northeasterly winds. Those winds have pushed the smoke from the eastern side of the complex more to the western side of the complex, especially around the Ruth area. And with the high pressure, we've seen warming temperatures and drying relative humidities, especially in those afternoon and early evening hours. And that's really gotten the fire activity going in the Ruth area the last couple of days. We heat those western and southwestern aspects. That air wants to rise, and as that rises, it creates its own little environment in there. Rising air, those warm, dry conditions, so we see increased fire activity, especially in the afternoon. As we're moving forward in the next couple of days, we do have a shift in the weather, especially in the winds, and they've already started this morning. Looking at the visible satellite, we're actually starting to see some clearing on this western side, and that's indicating to us that we have a change in the wind direction. What had been northeast to southwest is moving around the clock slowly from the northwest to west and now to the southwest. And what is that going to do? Well, it's going to push the smoke that's generated in the Ruth area back towards Post Mountain and into the Hayfork. And the winds may get strong enough eventually to even push it into the Sacramento Valley, the upper portions of that. So be aware with that. And with the smoke, unfortunately, it does impact the air operations. They did get to fly yesterday in parts of the north and northeastern sections of the fire. They quickly got smoked in during the afternoon. Today, the best potential for any kind of flying operations based on the smoke and the wind trajectory would be in the western side, the Ruth area, down across the western extent of the fire. With that said, we're still expecting a pattern change for the coming weeks or the coming days. When we get into Wednesday, those southwest winds ahead of a trough are going to start to increase. We're going to see 10 to 15 miles per hour with ridgetop gusts up to about 20 miles per hour. So be aware on those higher ridgetops along the south fork of the ridge that could really help to push the fire, push the smoke in the general direction of Post Mountain and towards Hayfork. But with those southwest winds, we're going to tap the moisture that's off in the Pacific, and we're going to see higher relative humidity. We're going to see more clouds and cooler temperatures. And what does that result in? Well, we're going to have the marine layer back. And that will, once again, impact the fire, especially with the aviation aspects across most of the central, northern, and eastern parts of the fire as we get into Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then the pattern wants to change again. High confidence in a large building ridge of high pressure. And what does that result for us? That results in more clear skies, low relative humidity, and very warm temperatures. And the confidence is very high in that pattern developing over the weekend and into early next week.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brooke. That was really good. I know people have had a lot of questions about that aviation. Why don't we see more helicopters flying around the fire? Folks did see them in Post Mountain yesterday. We want to remind everybody we have a temporary flight restriction. That's an FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, approved flight zone that nobody is allowed to fly in but the fire personnel. So when you see helicopters flying around Post Mountain, Ruth, and other areas here, those are incident helicopters. They have our air attack platform. Our air attack takes Brooke's weather and Chris Moore, our fire behavior from yesterday, all those inputs, and keeps an eye on the fire. You also had our operations chief, John Glover, flying over the fire to talk directly to the resources who are building containment line south of 36, who are working on the containment line in Ruth, who are working on the structure protection in those evacuated areas. Now here's a big question. When's our first rain predicted?
That is a great question, and we do have a little rain in the forecast on Thursday. A wetting rain, the chances of that are very low. However, we do see the potential for a little rain, probably a couple hundredths at best, and that would be along the western side of the fire, mainly along the South Fork Ridge and to the west, unfortunately. And not a lot of rain, not a high probability of a wetting rain, but with that rain, we do have higher relative humidities, cooler temperatures that will help the firefighting efforts.
Okay, great, thanks. And then another question we got from our audience is, will there be a big wind event like we had when this fire moved that might push the fire suddenly into Post Mountain or suddenly into Ruth? Is there any like red flag or big event?
We don't see any red flag or big wind events the next couple of days. Like I said earlier, we do have those winds increasing on Wednesday afternoon into Thursday from the southwest at 15 miles per hour. Could get some gusts in those ridge tops up to 20, but no real large wind events like we saw the last about a week ago, where we had a big northeast push, offshore flow with that warming, drying, and extreme fire behavior. We don't see that in the next 5 to 7 days.
Great, thanks. And so to kind of weave it all together, I heard you say the big ridge coming in again. So hot, dry, the fuels are really dry, very small amount of rain. So even with this conditions of the lighter winds, spotting potential, new starts, if somebody were to make a mistake and start a campfire or cause a fire to start, human cause, that could spread rapidly. I don't hear you saying that we're going into a moist, season-ending event. So we all have to stay very vigilant. The evacuated areas will stay evacuated. There's a lot of work to be done in Ruth to protect these structures. There's a firefight going on in there today because you mentioned it's drier, right? And that relative humidity, how low is it and what does that mean for us?
Yeah, the relative humidity is very interesting. If we take the same observations from what we're seeing yesterday to today, we're already 10 to 20% lower this morning. So we're starting drier. We're starting a little warmer. And that's just going to get that activity going in the Ruth area a little bit earlier. And we're already starting to see that on the visible satellite with a few development, the vertical extent on the satellite is showing that the fire is getting active once again in the Ruth area, especially on the ridge tops where they've already starting to break out of the low smoke.
Okay, and we do have the hand crews in there working. We have the engine supporting the structure protection. And today with that clearing air, we'll be able to see the helicopters with the buckets dropping water in direct communication with the firefighters.
Yeah, if all goes well with the smoke in our forecast, hopefully that they can get in there with the helicopters on the western side, the Ruth area. Smoke is challenging. You know, every day it has a different aspect, a different movement to it. Yesterday we got some luck with the northeast winds and some breaks up here. I would think the highest probability of any kind of breaks would be on the west side, just based on those westerly winds. But the folks in Post Mountain and Hayfork are probably going to see more smoke, denser smoke than what they've seen in the past couple of days, just because of the change in the wind direction that we observed.
Okay, great. And for the folks who are evacuated and the folks in Hayfork, if we have a sudden move in fire towards the 36, we will cut in with the breaking news. We want to just make sure that neighbors are still helping neighbors, people who can use their cell phones to get this message can then communicate with another neighbor who's evacuated or who's concerned. And as more neighbors help each other, then this high-tech technique can get to folks who don't have the connectivity. If there is a sudden move of the fire at any time towards the 36, we will break in with a cutting breaking news for you at home. So as you see more smoke in Post Mountain and Hayfork today, that's not necessarily because the fire is running. It's because there's more smoke being generated in general as the heat of the day and the low relative humidity.
Yeah, that smoke is, you know, you're going to see more smoke in the Post Mountain and Hayfork just because of the transport winds today. They're from a different direction, so it's taking all the smoke, all the fire that's developed in this western portion and pushing it to the north and east. So that's going to result in more smoke. We just don't have strong enough winds in the mid and upper level atmosphere to take it and move it to our east quick enough.
Great, thanks. And we also want to include Wildwood. We know you're here. We put a trap line here and we service that daily. We want to talk about Mad River. We know you're there. We have 2 public information officers based in in Mad River. We also are including Ruth in our trap line, mainly for the firefighters and folks in here so they can be aware of what the public needs to know for information. And Eric, do we have any questions?
No.
Okay, great. We'll get back with another Break It Down tomorrow. We want to thank Brooke. And if your son or daughter or anybody in your family wants to become a weather specialist, they have to do extensive training through the National Weather Service or NOAA. And then within the fire world, they need to become an incident meteorologist, which is called an IMET, I-M-E-T. So Brooke, thank you for your specialization. Thanks for supporting